Hey, how you doing? You'll see out in the garage tonight, and I wanted to have a little talk, right? A lot of y'all know I just bought a Tesla Model 3 a couple months ago. I love the car. I absolutely love it. But I'm not one of these guys that's going to sit there and tell you that it's all rosy and peaches and everybody should own one. So, what I want to talk about for a few minutes tonight is whether buying an electric car will work for you, because there's a few things that I have figured out in the time that I've owned it. Um, first, first consideration I would make is, can you charge at home? Right? It's an absolute must for me. Right? I got about $400 into home charger. I plug it in every night, and I start out with about 290 miles of range in the morning, every morning, which is convenient. But while Tesla has a very good supercharger network, the cost it offsets. To give you an example, I tell my car to charge after 11 o'clock at night, right? So I'm a member of a co-op, and my electric prices after 11 o'clock at night drop to 4 cents a kilowatt hour. 4 cents a kilowatt hour is pretty cheap. I think the average around here for people that have PWC and aren't in a co-op is about 12, right? Which still isn't bad. The few times that I've charged at superchargers, it is 33 cents a kilowatt hour, right? So that's roughly $19 to get you 300 miles. So you can see that that's not really worth it financially, if that's what you're going to do. However, if you get a charger at home, whether you're like me, 4 cents, 12 cents a kilowatt hour, well worth the offset of the cost. Most of y'all know I am a serious gearhead, right? Always loved fast cars, always had fast cars, always will. The Tesla Model 3 is a quick car, right? Not the fastest thing I've ever owned, but considerably faster than my Subaru WRX that I had before it. Right? I haven't gotten it to the track yet, but it's probably a low to mid 12-second car. Stock, the way you get it, and then there's a few options that go with you. So speed is not a reason not to buy it. They're very fast, especially off the line. All right. So I wouldn't even consider that in at all. Next thing, how far do you drive every day? In my opinion, and again, this is only my opinion, the perfect range to have to drive every day to have an electric car is, let's go 40 to 100 miles. Right? 40 to 100 miles. You won't have any kind of range anxiety. Nothing's going on. No matter how cold, how hot it is, what you turn on, what you turn off, you'll never have to worry about range driving back and forth. And if you're like me and you don't plug in every night, with a 60-mile commute, you can get 2 or 3 days off of one charge, excuse me. And so that's pretty convenient, right? If I was driving over 200 miles a day, I probably wouldn't pick a Tesla, especially if I lived in northern climates where it gets cold. I'm in North Carolina today. It was 76 degrees and it's February, so it doesn't get real cold here. So that's another thing. I would not buy one if I had to drive long mileage in the cold, because the cold really does reduce your range, right? Like I said, for me, not that big of a deal, but if you're up north, you're dealing with a lot more cold, which makes it worse. You're trying to drive long distances, you're good to go. All right, it just doesn't make sense for you. All right, so 200 miles. If you drive over 200 miles a day, probably not worth it for you, because you're probably going to end up having to supercharge sometimes, which again, takes the cost aspect. And I know a lot of people are like, I didn't buy it for the cost, I bought it for this and that. Okay, but you need to be able to justify it's going to cost you more for an electric car like Tesla Model 3 than a comparable ICE vehicle. It's going to. All right, it is. So the way to justify that is to be able to offset the additional payment or cost of the car with what you're saving in gas, and I've seen pretty good returns so far on mine. Probably not saving any money, but I'm breaking even. Here's the big one I think that most people should look at is how tech savvy are you? By tech savvy, I don't mean you know how to log on to your computer. You can get in it and work. Do you enjoy being behind technical things? Let's use your cell phone as an example, right? Do you look forward to new updates on your cell phone? Or do you hate it when it gets updated and it changes where your buttons are and it takes you a month to figure back out? If you're the latter, if you're the person that absolutely hates when your cell phone updates and it changes things, you don't want an electric car, right? Especially not a Tesla. They put out updates all the time. It changes things in the car. It changes button placement and things like that, right? So you have to enjoy, going in and researching what's the new features that you're going to get, things like that, or you're just not going to enjoy driving the car. My wife curses at her cell phone all the time. I probably wouldn't put her in a Tesla Model 3 every day. Last thing is, do you like buttons and switches? All right. This one pretty much applies to the Model 3 only, because as you know, you got the big tablet in the middle, and that controls everything, right? Windshield wipers, headlights, everything is there. Now, Tesla's done a pretty good job of trying to make the driving experience automatic for you. You get in, you sit down. If it's dark outside, the lights turn on. If it's raining, the windshield wipers turn on. But like everything else, sometimes it's not perfect. It doesn't do it perfect every time. So you have to not mind navigating through menus to do things on the car, instead of reaching down and turning a switch or turning a knob for it to get warmer in the car, right? You have to touch the temperature and then use a slide dial to come up. Excuse me. The good thing is that Tesla has made it to where you can voice control most of these things, right? As long as you're comfortable with that. Another thing that I didn't like about the car when I first got it, and I'm kind of getting used to it now, is that there's no Android Auto, there's no Apple CarPlay in it. There are streaming services that are available for music download or for music listening, right? But it's not Apple CarPlay, it's not Android Auto, so you'll have to get used to that. I found a few songs that I can't find in their streaming sites. A little disappointing, but for the most part, it works. You can still play music off of Android Auto through the Bluetooth connection, but you don't get the controls and the voice control that you would with CarPlay or Android Auto. So I really wish that they would incorporate that in. One of the things that I really like and I get asked about all the time is about navigating, right? Hey, have you taken on a road trip? We've taken a couple short road trips, 300-400 miles in it. And what I really like about the Tesla, and I've got a friend that has a Rivian and it doesn't have this feature built in, but the Tesla, through the navigation that's built in, will automatically, figure out when you need to stop and get power along your road trip. So we tried it out, and it works perfectly here on the East Coast. So I've been pretty impressed with how accurate it is at telling you where you need to stop. The other thing with that is it doesn't take an hour to recharge these cars anymore, right? We're getting up 350 kilowatt per hour charging station, and the Tesla navigation app tries to spread you out. So every 2 to 3 hours, you're stopping for, 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes. And at first, that bothered me a little bit because I'm one of those guys that likes to get on the road and go. But what I've noticed is by it making me stop, I tend to plan my bathroom stops. I'm no longer, holding it until I'm running to the bathroom, at the last minute. I can stop and get coffee, get drinks, whatever. And by the time I get back, right, I have enough charge to continue on the trip, right? And I kind of like that. One benefit that I never thought about that I've noticed when doing these trips is that at the end of the trip, I'm less fatigued. And I think that has all to do with, stopping every 2 hours for 20 minutes or so in order to get out and stretch. So that's kind of my thoughts. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments. I'd like to start let's talk about this. I know many of you are 100% against electric cars, EVs. That's fine, right? I love it, but I'm also a tech nerd, right? I have an automated house. I like when things happen automatically for me, and I like the challenge of figuring out how to do it. And I look at the Tesla as kind of an extension of that. So, yeah, any questions? Hey, ask them down below. Let's have a conversation about it. I'm totally open. Like I said, I'm a gearhead, right? I'm going to be doing a little more content tech-wise here in the future, especially with my home automation and stuff that's going really well. So I'll keep you guys up to date on that. So if cars, tech, fishing, if you like all that stuff, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. It helps me out a lot. All right. Hey, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.